Three, two, one. We're live. Anthony, welcome.
Jay, good to be here. I'm loving the bar scene behind you.
Thank you. Good seeing you again. I know you're pressed for time. We got a short stop here. First thing I want to do is I want to talk about background. I want to talk about your background. Then I want to get into Bitcoin quite a bit because that's a big position that you guys are taking, and it's obviously moving. It's topical. But before we do that, the show is about docents, and I generally speak about that as a docent is like a mentor. It's kind of an analogy that I use. Docents are guides in museums, as you obviously know, and libraries and what have you. But docents are in everyday life too. So I view you as a docent. I view Michael Jordan as a docent. People that we look up to that are influential. But what I'm really interested in are who are your docents, right? When you grew up, who are the people that you looked up to that helped guide you to where you are today?
So, I've actually been putting a little bit more thought into that since our original conversation. And so I'm actually now coming with a little bit of a library in addition to, because I think what you're saying, and, it's the first time I've ever been in the same sentence as Michael Jordan.
Cool.
So I'm going to hug you virtually over the podcast. Okay. Over our Jets and telecommunications unit here. But, listen, I mean, for me, I guess it's my family, obviously. I grew up in a parochial family. My parents didn't go to college. My uncle had a motorcycle shop in the town. He was an entrepreneur. My dad was a crane operator. So I had this eclectic upbringing. I would say from my dad, I got his work ethic and his straight shooterness. He was a no BS kind of guy, Jay. Your father-in-law will appreciate this. We'll talk about him in a second, but there was a Young's Chinese laundry on Main Street in Port Washington. And I can remember a day my dad was taking some dress shirts. He wore them on the weekends, but he wore, greenies, which was like equipment, clothing during the week. And I'm at the store with him. We come out of the store on Main Street in Port Washington. He has a parking ticket on the windshield. And so my father was the kind of guy that he didn't even go home with the parking ticket. He walked with me up to the post office to get a mail order, Jay, to pay the parking ticket. Okay, that's my father. Okay, so he was like the bus driver in a Bronx Tale. There was no funny business. He had all these little cliches. If you can't afford the ticket, don't go to the movies, live below your means, all this sort of stuff. Right? But he's just a hard worker. My uncle was a little bit more of a lunatic. He was a motorcyclist and he had this motorcycle shop. And so I worked in that motorcycle shop from age 11 to 19. So I learned how to sell in that shop. I learned how to, mechanically change chains and do things like that. I mean, I changed Billy Joel's.
That's pretty cool. By the way, did you know that Caitlin's uncle used to be in that band?
Oh yeah, I did know that.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah,
small little island you guys have out there.
A small island. But I mean, Billy Joel was coming to that shop. And let me tell you, man, Billy Joel, talk about docent in the sense of how you treat people. Billy Joel was 33 at the time. I was 17. He was a rock star, okay? He treated us like we were gold. He bought me a slice of pizza. Well, we were waiting for some parts to come. We had to order some parts from a motorcycle parts shop. It's coming to our shop. Then we're going to install them. It's like, let's go get some pizza. So I'm at the local pizzeria. I'm at Carlo's Pizzeria with Billy Joel, May of 1982. Right. And this is before smartphones. I've got girlfriends of mine in the
There's no selfies, guys.
They're like, Anthony, can I run home and get my Kodak, my Kodak
Polaroids.
camera, right? But right. So, look, I mean, but my uncle really taught me a lot about that stuff. And then, but I brought some books because I want to show you a couple of books. Okay. So this is The Wisdom of Leaders. It was written by Derek Wellington Johnson. What a great book. I often go through this book because it's all aphorisms on leadership. It's just a reminder of the type of person that you want to be. Now, remember, we're never the person that we want to be, right? We're always striving to be a better person. Right. But this is about that. This is a book that I would recommend to every single person because I believe all of us are in sales. It's an older book. There's a new interpretation of this book. It was written in 1946. It was How I Raised Myself from Failure to Success in Selling by Frank Bettger. And Frank was friends with Napoleon Hill, who wrote the book Think and Grow Rich. And so the last book I would recommend to people is George Clayson's book. And if you haven't read it, you should read it. Even though you've done very well, it's a primer on how you make yourself rich. And it's called The Richest Man in Babylon. And it's just these allegories about how to become rich and what you do. And I've been doing that since I read the book, which is pay yourself 10% of your net income every month, no questions asked. Since I was a kid, I put 10% of my income away. And so those are books that I've read. Those are sort of docent sort of a thing. But I want to talk about your father-in-law for a second, because I think he's another very interesting guy, because he was a teacher in my hometown and he also lived in the town. So that was a little unusual. And weirdly, he's like an entrepreneur among other things. Okay.
He probably doesn't view himself that way, right?
Probably doesn't view himself that. Probably views himself as an educator, but
Yeah.
he bought some houses when he was a young guy. And I'm going to set the scene for you, and hopefully he'll listen to this goddamn podcast and he'll be embarrassed. I'm going to set the scene for you. I mean, that cat was always in shape.
Yeah.
But he was 29 when I met him. He was 29 when I met him. I was 13. He was my social studies teacher. He had a perm at a Warren Beatty's 1975 movie, Shampoo.
That's awesome.
Okay, and I'm talking about a serious perm. And then he had one of those macho man mustaches.
Yeah. I saw those photos.
Right. So he was right out of Central Casting. Okay. You know, if the guys on the Village People needed like a replacement one night, Bob could have rolled in there, no problem. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So but that's your father-in-law. He was a terrific teacher. I learned a lot from him. You can tell him that he colored my view on a lot of things. But the most significant thing, and I actually, years later, I was actually helpful on some of these issues, was the death penalty. Your father-in-law, I'm 13 years old. He was making the case against the death penalty. When I got to Harvard Law School, I wrote a paper on that. And your father-in-law was actually right about that. It's a capricious law. It's not properly administered. You know, you or I could take a machine gun, knock out everybody on staff, drop the machine gun, wire $25 million to my lawyer, and I'm going into a penitentiary as a nut job. Okay. If I have a 70 IQ and I'm a person of color and I don't even do the goddamn thing, I may even get accused of it. And then I don't have any
circumstantial evidence is a death penalty. Yeah.
Exactly. And so it is so unfairly administered and it's so racially charged that social justice requires that we eliminate the death penalty. But so that was your father-in-law. Okay. He was a terrific teacher. I mean, he still, when I say that was, he still is. I see him walking around town, you know, he's still walking faster than Linda. I mean, that's got to be that Italian shit. You know what I mean? It's like poor lady's trying to catch up with him, you know. But, you know, he is a terrific guy and he was a role model. And I'm going to tell one quick story, which I think is important. Okay. We had a tough neighborhood. I mean, I was in a blue collar neighborhood. Your dad can tell you, your father-in-law can tell you. And there was a big, fairly mature girl that stole one of my friends, who I would say was a slight guy. And, you know, when you're 13 years old, some of us are growing like weeds. Other of us are not growing at all. You know, and this one guy, his name is Todd Magazine. I was taller than this son of a bitch when I was 13. But unfortunately, I stopped growing at 13. You know, I'm like the same height I was then, right? And this son of a bitch is now like this guy's like 6'2". But back then, he was like a tiny, scrawny kid. You know, he was like the pre-Captain America before he went into the chamber, right? And the girl took his jacket. And it was like a very expensive winter jacket. So I went into the lunchroom and I ripped the jacket off her. And I told her, you know, you can't steal the guy's jacket. And I gave the guy the jacket back. And she had two older brothers. They were coming down to kick the living crap out of me. And your father-in-law was a local and he knew there was trouble brewing. He came to my rescue. Okay. And we went out the back door of the junior high school and he and Mrs. Cariello like drove me home in some like white Chevrolet Impala. Right? And
They rushed you out.
this is the shit that you never forget, you know? And so like, you know, for me, I got very lucky. It was a very good public school system. My parents are good people. They're not educated. You know, when I got into Harvard Law School, my mother thought it was Hartford Law School, Jay. I mean, she had the map out, and we were going to Hartford, Connecticut. I'm like, Ma, I'm going to Harvard. She's like, well, isn't that in Connecticut? It's Hartford, right? I said, no, Ma, it's Harvard. It's not Hartford. Well, why the hell would they call it Hartford Law School if it's not in Connecticut? Because it's not called Hartford Law School. That has literally been a standing joke for the last 35 years in our family. My mother thinks I went to Hartford Law School, okay? But the point is, they weren't educated. They didn't care. It could have been East Bum, you know what, law school. They didn't care. They were just into the fact that I was trying to get educated, you know, and that was a different time to grow up on Long Island. So for me, I would say all those things to you, all those things blended into really helping me develop good habits to try to become successful. I've had my shortcomings. I've had my series of failures. But I'm going to say one last thing to you, because I think this is also very important. You are triggered in your life by your early life experiences. And so, you know, if your dad was a carpenter and he had a blue collar family, and there was variability to his income, which you felt and you were sensitized to as a kid, you probably put something in your computer, you know, in your chip programming. You were like, okay, I'm going to do everything I can to scale capital and to create a lifestyle for my family that allows me to be financially independent. And so I identify with you, and I respect that because I did that. And there's a legendary investor by the name of Byron Wien, who he's 90 now. He's at he's at Blackstone, I should say. I'm sorry. But he used to be at Morgan Stanley. He's a friend of mine. And he said something to me that I want to share because I think it's absolutely true. Something happens to you, age 11 to age 18. That 7-year period of time is you're transforming from a boy into a teenager, into your early adult status, where you're forming what you think your future identity is going to be, this ideation of who you want to be.
Sure.
And for me, you know, I can remember my dad getting his hours cut back in the mid 70s. And I can remember the pressure on the family, the pressure to make the mortgage payment, the pressure to figure out the taxes, the pressure to make sure that there was enough living expenses. And, you know, you felt that anxiety in the house. Totally. And again,
and they're doing the best they could. So you don't feel, there's no animosity in any way. You respect the fact that they struggled, but it motivated you. Exactly. Yeah, I felt that.
I'm not, and by the way, I'm not telling any of your listeners or viewers that I grew up poor. Right. I would never disrespect my dad's work ethic or the way my parents managed and saved and built their household by telling you I grew up poor. I did not grow up poor. I lived in a really nice middle class home in Port Washington. My dad bought it for $16,000 in 1962. He had an $11,000 mortgage on it. And, you know, it had one full bath upstairs. I subsequently renovated the house for my parents. There's now 2 full baths in there. 5 people lived comfortably in that house, period, the end, you know. But I'm bringing this up because it created anxiety in me. So I went out and got myself a paper route. So I was working at a motorcycle shop. I was stocking shelves after athletics from 7 to 10 p.m. Once I got my work papers at Key Food. And for about 2.5 years, I had a paper route. And so I was 11 and a half years old. I was putting these baskets on my 10-speed. I was going to pick up the papers. I would line them up in my thing, and then I would go out and deliver the papers. They gave me this small route, and then I built it up. And one of the things that I did was I went to Mr. Fusco, who's now deceased, and I got free papers from him on a Wednesday. And your in-laws would know this area. It was called the Dolphin Green Apartments. These are like these middle-class apartments actually on Manhasset Bay on Plandome Road, which is about to turn into Main Street. And I would go down to those apartments. There were like Jewish women, Irish women, and Italian women. And like every one of them knew my mother, you know. And my mother was like Siri before there was a Siri or Alexa, right? Like if you said, hey, if you said Marie, who's banging who in the town? My mother said, you know what I mean? She knew everything. Okay. She knew which teachers were having affairs. Okay. That'll really make your father-in-law. Yeah. Because one night I'm at the dinner with Linda and Bob, and I'm like, yeah, that guy, he was doing XYZ. And how did you know that? So my mother knows everything, because she worked in a nail salon in that town. You know what I mean?
She knew everything then. Yeah.
Yeah. So I went into that apartment buildings, knocking on the doors, dropping off free papers on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
And then on a Thursday, I would collect the money. And I would say, hey, Mrs. Gould, how are you? Great. Do you want daily and Sunday? That would be, if you just wanted daily, that was Monday to Saturday. But if you wanted daily and Sunday, it was all 7 days. Some people just wanted Sunday. And I would collect the papers and I would say, how did you enjoy your free paper? Oh, great. I want you to subscribe to Newsday. Help me out, blah, blah. Right. And I got to just tell you, it's crazy. I remember this, but there was a woman by the name of Mrs. Sheridan. The family ran Sheridan Electric in town. And I think it was like $1.40, Jay, okay, to be a daily and Sunday full subscriber. She used to give me $6. Okay. I used to wait like a dog, okay? When I rang the doorbell, I was just like this because I knew $6 was coming out of that house for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's the town I grew up in, So to me, I, very blessed, very grateful for that upbringing. And, I've had a measure of success. I've had my trials and tribulations. I got my ass fired from the White House, which is a world famous firing. But so what? The point is, I think this is the big lesson for your viewers. You're an entrepreneur, so you get this. You've had your successes and you've had your setbacks. By the way, I don't know one entrepreneur, Jay, that hasn't had that.
Exactly.
So if you're not ready for that, you dream about your life. At least I did. I dreamed about my life going
vision.
Yeah, in a 45-degree angle. Everything's going to be perfect. I'm going to have perfect kids. My wife and I are never going to fight. My business is going to go up in a straight line without any problem.
It's Murphy's Law, though, right? Yeah. Everything
never,
can go wrong.
Never going to be like that. So you have to train yourself for resilience, and you have to train yourself. And the only way you can do that, or at least the only way I can do that, is through gratitude. You have to stop and be grateful. So like every morning I try to get to the gym. I got to the gym this morning, and then I have a gratitude list and I write it down. What am I pumped about today? Now, not the standard things, right? Because I have pumped about, my family seems to be doing well. My kids are okay, that sort of stuff. But like, what am I actually grateful for right now? And, it's that I got my mother's has got leukemia. She's a leukemia survivor. She's been being treated for the last 5 years. And I got her test results back yesterday. And the good news is she's still in remission. So that's my thing for today. You follow what I'm saying? It's like, okay, so now all of a sudden, Bitcoin can go from 58,000 to 45,000.
Doesn't matter.
Shit, Are you allowed to curse? Right. I'm assuming you are.
Yeah, of course.
It's going to piss off Bob Brackett, but fuck it. Okay, but
that's it. Fuck it.
What do you want me to do? I fucking grew up I grew up with a bunch of fucking. These were like a combination of like barn animals and knuckle dragging lunatics. Okay, so what am I going to do, right? You never. But
then you were on Wall Street. It wasn't any better, right?
And by the way, what I said about fucking Steve Bannon, just so everybody knows, it was really funny, but it wasn't true. The guy would have to do hot yoga for like 25 years to get into the position I suggested he was in, right? So, it was a little bit of a joke, but that's another thing. You got to be careful. You can't trust everybody, right? This was a kid from Long Island.
Yeah, exactly.
He was a journalist from Long Island. His
you
father
guys grew up
worked
together, right? Yeah.
Yeah. My father worked.
There's a code. Come on. I don't care what the rules are.
My father worked with his dad for 50 years. They were family friends. They used to socialize together. And this guy, did that to me. There's a restaurant called Piccola Liguria in our town on Shore Road. And Victor's like, he doesn't even want the family coming back to the restaurant. You can't do that. It was like a ridiculous thing that the guy did. But you know what? In hindsight, it probably helped me because that ejection got me back to my career, got me back to my family. And so that's another big lesson, right? You think bad shit is happening to you.
Yeah, what's the good and the bad, I always say, right?
But there's always a silver lining, okay? I got crushed last year in the markets. If you were in my fund, you wanted to strangle me. We were down 24% in the month of March.
Sure.
That was literally the worst year I had. So my worst year in business, Jay, was the month of March 2020.
But then by the end of the year, you were fine.
I was, though. Yeah, that's the weird thing. My actual really worst year was 2008. We made a lot of the money back. I knew it was a temporary setback, but my clients didn't. Some of them got mad at me and fired me. Some of them doubled down, said, okay, this is ridiculously cheap. It's an anomaly, a 100-year pandemic. I'm going to double down, right? But here's what it did. I opened up 2 new business lines, and then I built that Bitcoin fund.
Yeah, that was smart.
And maybe I wouldn't be in those businesses. I'm in the business of the secondaries. You and I were talking about Clubhouse, of course.
Sure.
I've got a piece of Klarna right now. I don't know if Klarna. It's a fintech company based in Europe. I just did a piece of Chime before their IPO.
You floated that one to me. Yeah.
Yeah. So look, my point is that like I wouldn't be in those businesses if I didn't have that.
Looking for the opportunity if you were frothy and doing well in the market. Why? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Here's my latest coffee. All I do now, because we're in the pandemic and I'm living in my basement like Joe Biden. I mean, I had to kick Trump's ass from the basement. So all I do now is, I'm right now in Brioni from the waist up, but I'm in Champion Fizz Edge shorts from 1981 from the waist down. Right? Yeah. You follow that? So all I do now is I collect T-shirts and coffee mugs. So this is one from my wife, right?
Love it.
May randomly start talking about Bitcoin.
Caution, he may randomly start talking about it. Yeah, it's all Bitcoin all day, right?
Yeah. So the point I'm making is like you can have this like eclectic life. You can have these setbacks. You can have these mistakes.
Yeah.
But you got to get up in the morning with the enthusiasm.
Well, that's the next thing I wanted to talk to you about.
This is your rookie. This is your rookie year. You know what I mean? I'm like pumped for today.
So I talked to a bunch of people on Clubhouse. We were just talking about Clubhouse, the new drop-in audio app. And I'm in these Bitcoin rooms, which, by the way, you got to come on with me and we'll go in there together and talk to all these Bitcoin professional. There's a bunch of influencers in there, like Jimmy Song and Max Kaiser. They're all in there with us, right? Yeah. And a few of these guys were like, you've done so well financially. Like, what motivates you? What gets you up in the morning? And I said to them, for me, there's a goalpoast that we have, right? Because we had this anxiety growing up. You and I had we talked about this previously. We kind of share these experiences, right?
Fear of poverty, Jay. I don't care what the bank account says. I'm like,
that's
okay,
right. Got to keep moving.
My dad got his hours cut back. Let me get up this morning and add to that pile, right?
Yeah. And for me, it was like, I want to take care of my own. Then I want to take care of me and my wife. And then I had the kids, and then we had more kids. And then you got to think about colleges. You got to take care of colleges. And if you have the ability to be able to take care and pay for their houses, and they're going to have grandkids, the goalposts keep moving away because you keep thinking about more people that you can help. Because when you get to a point where you have these opportunities presented, most people don't have it. So I think there's an element of, if you grew up in an area and you had the same opportunities as the people you grew up with, when you get older, you start making different choices. And then you have choices plus luck, which creates different outcomes, in my opinion. But once you have success, it's like this escape velocity, right? And all the opportunities get presented to me, and they don't get presented to other people that I know. So I feel an obligation to do those things to help the people that are closest to me around me. And I don't know if you feel that way, but that's how I've felt.
No question. But also, that is like the greatest feeling in the world. So Stan Druckenmiller has always said that his greatest joy is when he's trying to help somebody else out. So I've got a group of guys that have worked for me, some of which have gone on to build their own businesses. I'm always trying to help them. I've got a group of guys that are in my business that I've made partners at very young ages and downloaded equity to them so that they're like super motivated and they feel like they're going to break out. My portfolio manager grew up in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, which is a coal mining town. That's the exact same town my dad grew up in. He moved to Port Washington when he was in his late teens, early 20s. I think he was 19 or 20. Yeah. He had graduated from the high school in Plains, Pennsylvania. And so these are impoverished areas. So he's doing very, very well, meaning this guy that's my portfolio manager. My point is I'm not going for the last buck. I'll tell you a story that I wrote in my first book, Goodbye Gordon Gekko, which ultimately got translated into Chinese because it was about Li Ka-shing. And so the 30-second story, but it's worth it. Li Ka-shing, the richest person in Asia, now 92. In 1999, he was 70. I was 35. And I was soliciting him to be a partner in my fund. And I was in Hong Kong for a 2-week period of time marketing, 1999. And it was a Sunday morning. I was having no success getting through to him. Finally, one of my my former Goldman Sachs colleague, called me and said, Mr. Lee will see you Sunday morning. You got to go to his office. This is before Chung Kung Center got built. So it was at the Hutchinson Whampoa office, this small, dank, mid-60s office in Hong Kong. I jumped in a cab. I put my suit on. I went over there. Mr. Lee came out. Remember, and this guy's now worth over $100 billion at age 92.
Yeah.
And he's known as Superman in Hong Kong. And people like to say that Warren Buffett is the K.S. Lee of America, that sort of thing. And he's probably one of the most powerful people in the world.
For sure.
He comes into the meeting. He couldn't have been more well-mannered or down to earth. And he sat down, he looks at me, Jay, and he says, so Anthony, tell me about the stock market. Tell me about the stock market. What's your opinion? And I look over at him and I'm like, holy shit, if I'm talking, okay, this is going to be the worst meeting of my life. This is one of the richest people, the most successful, most influential people in Asia. If I'm doing the talking, right?
That's right.
He figures I'm going to start to try to impress him with my 35-year-old ego-based knowledge. I look at him, I say, Mr. Lee, the market could go up, it could go down. I said, I don't know. I could give you my opinion, but I don't know if it's going to be that worth it to you given your success. But let me ask you this, sir. You're 70, and God bless you. May you live a very long life. I'm 35. I'm exactly half your age. Can you tell me something that I can take with me for the next half of my life that you've learned in your lifetime? Could you tell me something? And it was supposed to be a 10-minute meeting. It turned into an hour meeting, Jay. Okay. And K.S. Lee looked at me and he said, well, I grew up with absolutely no money. I literally was eating like rice and like, the entrails of like, animals like pork and things like that. And I grew up with no money. And I started a plastic flower business in mainland China. And then the revolution took place. He's a young man in the revolution, right? And now he's working in 1968, Mao decides he's going to hammer Hong Kong. Hong Kong stayed as a British colony and it became a commercially capitalized, unbelievably beautiful city. It's still a beautiful city. It's changed a lot. But he said that the property values were getting hammered in Hong Kong. So he had this plastic flower export company. He took every dollar of his life savings and he put it into the rock known as Hong Kong and started buying property there. And of course, it turned out his assumption was correct. Mao did not want to give up the capitalist, mercantilist activity on Hong Kong. He needed it for the communist economy that was a disaster. And Lee went on to make multiple billions of dollars. And he said to me, so when you have an opportunity, seize it, have high conviction. That was lesson number one. Number two, he said to me, leave money on the table for your partners. And that includes your staff, and it includes when you're doing a deal. So if you're in a negotiation, leave a little bit of money on the table for your partner.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, he goes, that will make you very, very wealthy. And you'll always have partners that want to do business with you because like, okay, that guy's a fair guy. He's going to cut a good deal for me. He said the other thing, excuse me, it will do is it'll make you happy, Anthony. It'll make you happy. Why, Mr. Lee? He said, well, when you ask for the last nickel in a deal, you will get it. You will likely get it if you're persistent. And then you'll go back to your office and say, why didn't I ask for 2 nickels? I needed 2 nickels. And what happens is you start to tier things in your head and you become rapacious where it's never, ever enough.
Yep.
So if you leave money on the table for your partners, you create this positive externality and this positive karma. You're going to live a very, very happy life and you're going to always be able to do business.
It reminds me of they say I've heard they say a good deal is when both sides are not ecstatic about the deal. Kind of, it's one of those kind of things. You know. But by the way, we sold our company to Nexstar Broadcasting. Do you know Perry Sook, the CEO at Nexstar? Have you ever met him? Okay,
only by
nice
name.
guy. Really, he was genuinely a nice guy. He was the founder of the company. They were coming to our office. Obviously, I had to impress this guy. I was exactly around the age that you were. I was 35, 36 when we sold the company, when you met him. And I remember I read this book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, years ago.
Yeah, Dale Carnegie, sure. So you were reading, so you were doing what every blue collar kid did. You read Think and Grow Rich, Power of Positive Thinking, and you read Dale Carnegie's book.
And in my generation, I read Robert Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad Poor Dad. But yeah.
Right, Rich, yeah. Well, and Robert is a friend. And Robert's a big Bitcoiner, by the way, as you probably know.
He was very influential to me.
Yeah, Robert is a really good thinker, and he's got great writing. And Robert should be a guy that you look up to. And also The Millionaire Next Door, I think it was written by Stanley. That was a good book. That was a lot like the Clayson book.
When I met Perry and he came into the office, I said to my executives and everybody that came in, because it was a big conference room and all their executives came and they flew in from Dallas, and I said, guys, the key here is to get him talking about himself. If he's talking about himself when he leaves, he's going to say, these guys are fucking great. And that's exactly what he did. He came in, very skilled entrepreneur, obviously, because he took it from one TV station to 180 by the time he met us. And he comes in, he starts asking me about Yashi. How'd you guys do this? Da, da, da. And genuinely, as an entrepreneur, people like the stories. They like hearing other people's story. But I know if I'm talking about me when he leaves, he's going to say, this guy's a fucking blowhard. So I didn't want to do that, right? I said, before we get into that, if you don't mind me asking you, how did you go from a station manager to owning your first station to having 180 stations? He goes, we're not here to talk about me. And I was like, bye. I mean, does anybody else want to hear that? And everybody's like, oh, absolutely. And he's like, wow. Yeah. And then before you know it, an hour went by, it was lunchtime. And all he did was tell us his story, which was a fascinating story, by the way. He had Abry who lent the money and they did a roll up.
You see, you're winning when other people are talking. That cliche that your mother told you that you have one tongue and two ears for a reason, shut your mouth, And Dale Carnegie, to make you laugh, I got bored in my last semester at law school. And so I took the Dale Carnegie course. It was at a office building in Boston, and I drove myself down there. Your father-in-law remember this. I had a 1979 Berlinetta Burgundy Camaro, that I bought from a Sunoco station.
That's definitely an Italian's car back then. Come on.
Oh my God. Oh yeah. I had the power booster in the fucking car. I mean, I had the whole thing Guidoed out. I look like Guido. I had the hair blown back like Tony Manero. My first job interview at Goldman, I was wearing 100% polyester. I thought I looked fucking great, but I was like fully flammable for the job. The guy comes over to me, he's like, hey, you're the worst dressed person that we met, but you're smart. And so if you go buy yourself some suits and a shirt, I'll invite you back to Goldman, but I can't invite you back to Goldman looking like a funeral director from 1937 with the sheen.
You got to show me that photo.
And by the way, I remember calling my mother. This is like where you get self-esteem. I remember calling my mother. My mother was like, he doesn't know what he's talking about. You look fantastic. I don't really think I look fantastic in this 100% poly size sin suit. I don't think I look fantastic, right?
They're telling me they don't look good, Ma.
No, but I mean, the point is, right, that this is your rite of passage, and you learn from this stuff and you roll with it and you make yourself part of the joke. When Stephen Colbert is asking me, well, did you think I'm on the show. I got fired after 11 days. It's a week later. I'm sitting there on his show. Well, did you think you were going to last a long time in the White House? Stephen, I thought it was going to last longer than a carton of milk in the refrigerator. I didn't think it was going to be pouring out like that. My point is, if you're not part of the joke, and you're not rolling with it, then you're not having a good enough time.
The books my grandfather told me when I was younger, I was fascinated with wanting to get rich for the reasons that we talked about. And my grandfather was a carpenter by trade. I grew up next door to him. And I was asking him when I was in college, like, I want to get rich and this and that. And he's like, you're asking a carpenter how to do electrical work. This is what he said to me. I don't know how to do that. You got to ask people that are rich if you want to get rich. I go, I don't know anybody who's a millionaire. I came from a town that there was really no millionaires. I said, I don't know any. And there were the millionaire next doors that I found out about later that they were. These are the guys that had their own businesses and stuff, small businessmen that were worth a few $1 million, but I didn't know that. And they certainly didn't act rich in any way. But he said, why don't you do this? They all love to write autobiographies. Go get some of those, and then you can when you read enough of the books from the people that are inspiring you, and he said it in different words. I'm using my words, right? Because he spoke differently. He's like, but if you read these books, you're going to start to, I remember him saying this, you're going to learn through osmosis and you're going to start to think like them. You could even enter sentences and you never met them in person. So I feel that these docents are not necessarily just the people we meet. They're also the people that we look up to we never met, right? Like what I said, you're a docent. There's a lot of people that look up to you in the financial industry.
Well, I mean, it's nice of you to say. I mean, it makes me feel a little awkward, because like, if you see people look up to you, like, all right, well, shit, I hope I'm
doing a good job.
Yeah, you hope you're not a complete asshole, and you hope you're doing the right thing. But what I would say to anybody that looks up to me, the cliched line that there's no hero to a man's valet. At the end of the day, we all have our flaws, whether you're Winston Churchill or Abraham Lincoln, or you pick the person, the entrepreneur. But I'll recommend a book to you that I loved, that really shaped and influenced Skybridge. It was Sam Walton's book, Made in America. And that was his autobiography. And Mr. Sam, as they called him at the Walmart, was an absolutely incredible, legendary entrepreneur. And if obviously he'd be over 100 years old, so he couldn't be alive today. But if you look at his fortune that he amassed through Walmart, it got broken up into 5 or 6 family members, but he is by far the richest, wealthiest person. And then, believe it or not, wealthier than Amazon, because, you look at the amount of retail that Walmart does, it's staggering.
Yeah, that's true.
But he had great habits. He failed several times. His first 2 variety stores failed, and then he came up with the concept of moving the store 80 miles away from Sears and Kresge, which became Kmart. And once he figured out that he was in a rural enough area where he had no competition, he slashed prices, and he built this really good warehousing system. And there's a very famous story in that book where he's standing there on a Saturday morning. He always worked every Saturday. He has his apron on. People are coming through the electric doors. There's an old lady with his circular in her hand as she's pushing the stroller, the shopping cart. Mr. Sam, how are you? I'm great. How are you? Where are you coming from? And she mentions where she's coming from, and it's about 60 miles away. He says, well, why are you coming here from 60 miles away? Don't you have like a Sears and Kresge 15 miles from your house? And she says, oh, yeah, I do. But I looked at this circular, and I looked at these prices, and I measured the gas that I was consuming. And you are offering me way more value, and it was worth it for me to drive the 60 miles.
That's the key word, value.
And then Walton, to himself, but he writes it in the book, he's like, yes, I've got the formula. I have figured out that I'm going to go into these areas where the stores are not. Okay, and I did that with Skybridge, actually. I couldn't compete, in my mind, with Blackstone. They're just, a formidable competitor. But I could go into an area of the market that they were not in. That was the mass affluent. They're there now, but I got there in 2005, where I was democratizing the hedge fund industry for people, giving $50,000, $25,000 minimums. You could be in Steve Cohen's fund. You see what I mean? And now I've got 26,000 clients in those funds. So if I have a bad year, I could lose a couple thousand clients, but it's almost like an insurance book. I'm not going to lose the business. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
So I learned so much from Sam Walton. You talk about a docent. I would recommend to people to read that book. It is still, I tried to read that book every 2 years. It was probably written in 1990, 30 years ago, but it is still a legendary book, and it's worth your time to read.
I want to get into Bitcoin, but before we do that, you remember, because we did this show on Monday and it didn't record, so we got to do this again. And then I've never heard you say this on TV. No one's ever asked you this in any of the podcasts. Who are your top 3 favorite rappers of all time?
Yeah, you asked me that, and I'm like, okay,
now you have time to think about it.
I got a boring answer, right? I mean, Puff Daddy was a rapper when I was like a kid. You know what I mean? So I'm just telling you, Puff Daddy to me was like a legend. Yeah. Jay-Z to me was a legend. Also, I love his entrepreneurship. Okay. Yeah. And I would recommend the book by Michael Eric Dyson, biography of Jay-Z. I mean, the guy started out as a drug dealer in Queens. Sure. And so, and then the last one is LL Cool J. Ladies love Cool James. And, I think I'm biased to him because I loved his music back in the day. I mean, he's now an actor living out in LA,
Yeah.
but for about 12 years, he lived here in Manhasset next to me.
That's so cool.
And we developed a relationship, and our daughters liked each other. And he was a very down to earth, good dude. And let me tell you something, you would aspire to be in the shape. I mean, you
Oh my
look like
God.
you're in great
Yeah.
shape, and you
Not
look
like him.
or you got to be in the gym. This son of a bitch is like,
He's legit.
star athlete. I mean, this guy's in incredible shape. And he's a very down to earth, very smart in business. Built a nice family. But also I loved his music. So, but I mean, I probably just told you 3 rappers that your people that are listening to you actually know who the hell they are. Like, this guy's like in the Museum of Natural History talking about T-Rexes and like, you know what I'm saying? Triceratopses and shit. But I mean, that
Puffy was
my
cool.
era,
Puffy's
and I used to
cool. And
listen.
no offense to Puffy if you ever watched this, but I don't know that he's a top 3 rapper of all time, in my opinion. Jay-Z, I would definitely say it definitely is. But you got to have Tupac or Biggie in there, man. Come on.
Well, okay. So you see, the thing about that is that was like, believe it or not, after me. You know what I mean? That was like a little later. And then, that movie about those 2 guys was fucking great. I mean, I love that movie. And, Biggie Smalls had amazing music and obviously had a big influence on Jay-Z.
Oh,
If you read
100%.
Michael Eric Tyson's book, and, my son, Anthony, who calls himself the Mooch, and his Twitter feed is @MoochWorld, and his Instagram feed is @Mooch, is in the rap and video business. And so he's a videographer living out in LA. He's worked for Travis Barker, Machine Gun Kelly, a new artist by the name of Ian Dior. He's worked for will.i.am from the Black Eyed Peas.
Sure, yeah.
So my son is big time into film and production. And he would tell you, man, Dad, the music now almost has like a punk influence to it. If you go listen to Machine Gun Kelly, he's got a little bit of the knack in it, circa 1979. And so what you find from these guys is always a remix. And I also think it's apropos to business, Jay, because I have remixed ideas from others. I've seen something that I liked in somebody else's matrix, and I've said, okay, I'm going to take that, but I'm going to make it this way or that way. Talk about Bitcoin for a second. The Grayscale Trust, I'm so impressed with. Guys did an amazing job. $40 billion of assets under management, priced a little high. So let me create a mousetrap that I think will be more acceptable as I'm trying to democratize this thing. Oh, by the way, Grayscale's not trading at a premium right now, but for a very long period of time, it was a 20 to 30% premium. And so let me create something that doesn't have that 20%, 30% premium, cheaper, lower fees, that sort of thing. So you're always trying to build a better mousetrap.
So I want to know, you got into Bitcoin last year.
Yeah.
When did you first make your own purchase personally? And if you don't mind me telling me, as a percentage of your net worth, how invested are you in Bitcoin these days personally?
So I have, Bitcoin's moved since Monday. All right. So when you asked me that on Monday, I was
feeling
15.
better last week.
Yeah. When you asked me that on Monday, I was 15.
15%.
Now I'm actually, I guess, more conservative. I'm at 13.
That's just because of the price movement. It's not, you didn't sell, it's just price movement. Yeah.
So I came more prepared for this one, though. So I want a couple more books. Okay. This is a seminal book. Any Bitcoiners that listen to Jay Gould, please read this book and don't skim it. Read the goddamn thing. It's actually very good. It's easy reading. And it is the best book on money that I have read. And the reason why I want you to read the book is that when Bitcoin is moving around 10, 20, 30%, you read this, you'll be like, okay, I'm not ever selling that thing. Not selling that Bitcoin. That's going to be in my heirloom treasury for my kids. This book is also a book that moved me. It was written by a British financial journalist. His name is Dominic Frisby. And if you listen to my podcast, I interviewed him this week on Mooch FM. And this book was written in 2014, but it is worth reading today because he predicted a lot of the things that are going on today. And he explains Bitcoin, and he explains why Bitcoin is going to scale and adopt the properties of Metcalfe's law. And what are those properties? Metcalfe basically said, as the network expands, the value of the network will also expand
And for the listeners who
exponentially.
don't know that,
Nobody
explain like the fax machine analogy possibly.
Right. You've got one fax machine, it's no value, but you've got a million fax machines. Now they can communicate with each other. Same thing with the
By the way,
telephone.
imagine being
Same thing with
the
the
fax
computer.
machine sales guy for the first fax machine. That's a tough job, man. Who am I faxing it to?
Yeah. Well, let me tell you, one of my docents who I've actually become friends with now, I didn't know him back in the day when I was looking up to him, is Fred Smith. And Fred Smith was the founder of FedEx. And one of the best lines ever, he's like, if I knew how hard it was to start and execute FedEx, I never would have done it. I mean, he's like so honest, right? But he had a colossal failure in 1985, 86. What was that? He thought that the fax machine was going to knock him out of business, right? Because why would you need an overnight letter delivery or overnight package delivery if you were going to send things by facsimile? Yep. He also thought email was going to knock him out of business. So he created a business called eFax, and he had these data centers.
Fred created eFax?
So you would go to
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so you would go to the fax center, and instead of your FedEx, I'm FedExing this to Jay Gould, you would fax it to Jay Gould, and I would say, Jay, the eFax center is a mile from your house. I'm sending you this. And then FedEx had a service where they would either drop it off for you that hour or you could go pick it up at the FedEx.
Wow.
Okay. And it failed because of the introduction of low-cost fax machines. And everybody ended up having a fax machine. You now fax from your phone. And it failed because of that.
So, Anthony, why don't you tell me what your aha moment was for Bitcoin? Admittedly, you said you started out as a Bitcoin skeptic. Can you tell me what and why you were skeptical about Bitcoin initially and what's got you over the hump?
So it's a great question. And I want to start out by saying that there are Bitcoin deniers out there. That would be like Nouriel Roubini or Peter Schiff calling it shitcoin or Bitcon. And then there are Bitcoin evangelists. Maybe those are the Winklevosses. They talk about it all day. Maximalists, evangelists. They want to, convert you from Christianity into a Bitcoiner.
Religion.
But I'm a Bitcoin investor. And so what do I mean by that? I have looked at the strengths and weaknesses of Bitcoin. I have looked at Bitcoin as an asset class or a potential store of value. And I've looked at Bitcoin potentially as a currency, but more as a store of value right at this moment in terms of the evolution of Bitcoin. And again, I'm encouraging people to read The Ascent of Money by Professor Ferguson because he lays out what money is. It's basically just a technology that we're using with each other to transfer value. So avoiding a bartering situation, I walk into that beautiful bar of yours. I've got a calf that I just got from the farm. Here you go, Jay. Give me 3 gin and tonics, and you can go make your real Parmesan with this calf tonight. We don't have to do that. We have digits in our wallet. We have paper. We have coins. And what do we know about money? It's always worth less than the goods and services that we're transacting with. And so I brought props with me for the purposes of this. This is, and your father will get a kick out of this, these are Italian singles. See that? Tony Soprano would have those in his pocket. Those are Italian singles, okay? But what is that? It's a piece of fabric. It's got some printing on it, anti-counterfeiting strip. But what is it? It's a fabric. But yet this represents something in our society. I can walk in and get pizza with it.
Because we believe it does, right?
Yeah. So, but the weird thing about this thing is that you took us off the gold standard, not you, but our government did. Yep. And so now $2 of $1971 has comparable purchasing power to this. So $2021 is equal to $2 of 1970. We crushed the currency. So when you stop and think about it, you read Satoshi Nakamoto's white paper, or the people that are Satoshi Nakamoto, and you read the white paper, you're like, okay, I get it. You're trying to create this decentralized monetary mechanism, store of value mechanism, so that it can't be manipulated by central bankers. Okay, well, 3 things then would have to happen for me to be an investor. Number one, it would have to be scaling pursuant to the network effect, is pursuant to Metcalfe's law. Number 2, it would have to be regulated, or at least somebody opining on its regulation. They don't have to like it, but at least it's big enough now where everybody's pregnant with it.
Yeah.
And then the third thing, I've got to be able to store it. And because Bitcoin is, it has to be stored in a way where I can't have my password stolen or my SIM card stolen.
Yeah, by the way, your fund is using Fidelity for custody. What do you do personally? Do you have it with Fidelity personally?
I have it with
Okay.
Fidelity.
Okay.
Yeah, you have that. There's a $5 million minimum
Yep.
to have the account there.
Yeah.
But I do have it with Fidelity, and I have my.
What do they charge? What are their fees for the holding for protecting it?
Because we're scaled now, we've got $500 or $600 million. They're de minimis fees, but for a $5 million account, I think it's like 50 basis points.
50 basis points, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, look, for me, it's totally worth it because now
the phrase in the crypto and the Bitcoin community is not your keys, not your coins, right? What do you feel about that with Fidelity though? They say if they're controlling your keys, there's always the risk, right? You're going to lose your keys, you lose your coins.
Yeah, I don't see that because I have I have access to the keys.
Multi-sig. Right. You have multi-sig, right?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. I have access to the keys, and so no, I don't see that with Fidelity. And
sure,
they've got a world-class reputation, trillions of dollars under management. I don't see that with Fidelity.
All right, I want to ask you about corporate treasuries. Kathy Wood says if 10% of the S&P corporate balance sheets are replacing their cash with Bitcoin on the balance sheet, it can move the price around $400,000 or $500,000. What do you see happening and when? And if you were Tim Cook and you were running Apple and you got $200 billion in cash on the balance sheet, would you be putting that into Bitcoin? And if he's not, tell me why.
Okay, so I got to be totally straight with you. You asked me that question last week or Monday. And I said, no, I would think he's worried about the government being pissed off at him if he was doing that. So my original reaction was no. And then you told me that the recording didn't work. And I'm like, okay, that's good. Because now I got a chance to rephrase and restate that. Okay. Because I honestly don't know the answer.
I shocked you with that question.
Yeah. But when I got off the thing, I then worked out, I took a shower, that thing popped into my head. And I said, you know what? I think Apple's going to do it, actually. Because
what about the wallet on the Apple phone, right? Like it's all part of the bigger thing.
The whole thing. The wallet on the phone, the credit card, they're going to want to own some Bitcoin. They're going to want, even if it's $1 billion, $2 billion, $3 billion. By the way, I don't know if they own it or they don't own it. I honestly don't have.
He couldn't tell you anyway, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. But I have to go back and I want to restate my original definitive, declarative, no way they're going to own it. I'm like, no, that's wrong. I really do think they're going to own it.
It's really more, I think it's more about what you said the other day is the potential regulatory scrutiny. I think it makes more sense what you said in the sense that they won't be a first mover in doing this, but they're going to have to do it at some point, right?
Yes.
I mean,
yes. Yeah. So I got to restate that. So I now believe that they're going to own it. And so
can I tell you something that I know? And this is an inside kind of scoop. I hang out in the clubhouse rooms all the time at Bitcoin. There are people in the Apple corporate treasury hanging out listening to us. They won't accept our request to come on stage and talk. So why the fuck are they there?
Right.
What are they doing? They're listening. Okay. They're learning. They're doing the research.
Okay. All right. So there you go. So
we know that because we look these people up on LinkedIn. We're like, who is this guy?
Right. Okay. So that would be more evidence of it. Then. So I'm glad that the recording blew up. So now I can look smarter, because I don't know the answer, but I do think now.
How do you think that affects the price when they announce? Because we know it's coming at some point. Then I think, right?
Well, listen. I mean. I think it will move the price, but I also think it will move other corporate leaders. Okay. I think you'll be sitting there as a CFO. And here's the thing. You don't want to be short Bitcoin by not owning Bitcoin.
Right.
Okay. So if I told you I've got nominal dollars, we produce 26% more of them. So therefore each dollar in my pocket is worth less. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Then
it's a melting
Bitcoin,
ice cube, like Sailor says.
Yeah, it's going up. Bitcoin, like Ross Stevens from NYDIG, New York Digital Investment Group,
awesome.
had a great line. Yeah, he's an unbelievable guy. I would encourage everybody to listen to the Sailor.
Yeah, it was great.
Ross Stevens interview. But
his explanation of the Strike and Lightning Network was genius. I mean, just like simple for anybody to understand that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was brilliant. He's a brilliant guy. I was on the phone with him last night. We're doing a lot of business together.
Yeah.
What did he say to me, Ross? He said, well, think about it this way. That Hamptons real estate you want to buy may be going up in nominal dollars, but it's not going up in Bitcoin.
That's right.
Your Bitcoin
pricing
is
the world in Bitcoin. Yeah.
Your Bitcoin is pacing it. So let me just address this before we have to go. And that is the volatility of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And so you have to understand Metcalfe's law. You have to all of a sudden astral project yourself into Silicon Valley, and you have to adopt a VC's mentality. Because if you've got something moving on Metcalfe's law, it's going to be extremely volatile as it matures. Amazon would be an example of that. Apple would be an example of that. Even Microsoft, before it started scaling. And you'll have periods of time where it flatlines. You'll have periods of time where you have chunky performance. And so Amazon goes public May 15th, 1997, $10,000 now worth $21 million. But you had to suffer through 50% plus downturns to get that return.
Yeah.
And it's hard for people. And so the other issue, I just want to say to people that you have to really think about this. A lot of people won't buy Bitcoin because it's too good to be true. So what are you telling me? Something that was a penny is now worth $50,000 and then it's going to be worth $1 million. Okay, that's too good to be true. You're a dummy. And I think that's a good generic speed bump for investors. If it's too good to be true, stay away from it. I get that. But let me tell you something that's too good to be true. This phone, too good to be true.
Yeah.
It's a Pac-Man for all the data in this room. Every one of these books that I've got on the shelves fit in this phone. But that's not enough. Let's put my photos in here.
Games,
and
everything.
every song that I've ever listened to, I can put it in here too. So this is a Pac-Man. This is a miniaturization. See, Bitcoin.
Would you have believed that when 1982 graduating high school that they would be?
No, I wouldn't have believed that. But I'm saying to you that when you are an investor, be careful, because when somebody says to you something that's too good to be true, if there are people involved, you got to really analyze it. Bernard Madoff, too good to be true, run. Jeff Bezos and Amazon, 10,000 going to 21 million. That sounds too good to be true. It happened. Yeah. It's true. Apple is true. Microsoft is true. Well, guess what? Bitcoin got to $1 trillion in market cap. It's below that right now as you and I are speaking due to this volatility that we're discussing.
But it
got to $1 trillion in market cap. It got there in 12 years, Jay.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
incredible.
So let's take a chill and let's recognize that it's in full adoption mode. And in 3 or 4 years, it could be 2025 and you could have 1 billion people in Bitcoin.
Let me ask you, price prediction, because a lot of people give you the 1 year prediction. What do you think the 5 year and the 10 year prediction could be on this?
Well,
forget about the 1 year.
I said on CNBC, I think it'd be 100,000 a coin at the end of the year. Yeah. Joe Kernan was like, because he's an institutionalist. He's like, that's crazy. Yeah. But then I look at my Twitter feed. I got Bitcoiners that are like, why are you so bearish? What the hell's wrong with you?
Yeah, exactly.
Plan B, who's got his stock to flow chart, predicted Bitcoin would be 55,000.
He hit the nail on the head.
In May, got there earlier than that. It probably will be 55,000 in May. He's saying 288,000 by the end of the year. I don't know what it's going to be by the end of the year.
Yeah, in the short term, it's too hard, right? Yeah.
I don't know, but I can tell you that you can measure the value of it fundamentally by the number of users in the network. Mm-hmm. And once you start to see that, then it's like what Saylor said, your first Bitcoin purchase is the hardest. And then once you make a Bitcoin purchase and you understand the coin, then you're like, okay, I don't own enough of this. I got to figure out a way to buy more of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So give me a price.
Yeah.
10 years.
So I mean, 10 years, I got to believe that the coins will be $500 to $1 million. I'm not going to give you exact price because I think we don't know, but I do believe there will be scaling. There'll be at least 1 billion to 2 billion people in Bitcoin. And there's only 18 million coins because remember, there's 21 million that exist, 3 of which probably got lost. Yeah. They'll be mined out in 40 years, but the halving cycles will continue. There'll be a shortage. And if you're a Bitcoiner on here, pay attention, 48 million global millionaires. You've only got 18 million coins. You don't have enough coins for each millionaire in our society to own. It ain't
going to be cool to say how many Satoshis you have when you're a millionaire.
You're going to end up owning coins, and the Bitcoiners will be rewarded by this the same way early investors in Microsoft, early investors in Apple, Amazon, Berkshire. Berkshire investors got rewarded. Berkshire, by the way, Warren Buffett says, well, if it's too good to be true, well, it can't be true. But Warren Buffett, you're too good to be true. Right? $10,000 in that in 1965, it's like, I don't know, almost $700 million, some crazy number. my point is that don't be overly skeptical.
Yeah, I like the idea what Ross said about pricing the world in sats or pricing the world in Bitcoin. Like we built our house a couple $1 million, and that was back in 2014. And if you look at that price today, hundreds of millions of dollars, and I don't know that we're gonna have that same growth trajectory moving forward that we had in the past, because like you said, it happens quickly, and now the coins are mined, and who knows what will happen in the future. But the growth is going to outpace most asset classes, if not all asset classes, moving on a forward basis for the next 20 years. Would you say that you agree with that?
I believe that. And the other thing that I would say to you is that if you understand global economics, okay, you have to move back to a standardized currency for the world that can't be manipulated by central banks.
Two more questions, if you don't mind, because I know you got to hop. I love the phrase when you said, this was one of the two things you said, by the way, I repeat to people all the time, which is there's 48 million millionaires and 21 million Bitcoins that'll ever be mined. That just resonates with most people, because it ain't going to be cool to say, it ain't going to be cool to say I have a half a Bitcoin when you're a millionaire, right? It's like you missed the boat is what that means. The other thing you said is that the wall of money is coming. I love that line. A wall of money is coming. You're a pretty prudent guy. You're a smart guy. You know everybody on Wall Street. I imagine you did your diligence, you and your team. Can you tell me who you talked to that made you say, I know this money's coming? Because you don't just guess that on the back of a napkin. You had some conversations. You don't need to name names, but like profile who it was, and what made you say, fuck it, this is it.
Yeah, so that's the benefit of my experience and my 30 plus years on Wall Street and my SALT conference and tracking 1,200 hedge funds. I think you asked me in our original recording, do I talk to CFOs? I don't, because they're private. They're private. I'm sorry, public companies. Reg FD prohibits me, right?
Yeah.
So, but I talk to hedge fund managers, and I can talk to pension fund managers, and I can talk to union people. Yeah. And yes, exactly. And that's where I got those numbers. And by the way, Ross will probably be pissed at me, but I also talked to Ross, right? And I talked to guys.
Well, he's got a book of what, 21 billion this year, he said, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, he's talking about it, so it's okay for me to talk about it. But my point is that like I have enough feel for the market and enough feel for the exchanges. That I believe that the demand is overwhelming, and I believe that some people are selling, of course. Somebody that bought it at 3,000, maybe they're selling it to build a beautiful house at 50,000. So there's going to be turnover.
Yeah.
But just remember this, like Amazon, in the beginning, it was chunky. It's Jeff Bezos and a few VCs. Okay. Every year that goes by that Bitcoin is in existence, there's less whale activity in the sense that whoever were the big owners day one, they've diversified a little.
Anthony, CJ Wilson, a baseball player, a friend of mine, he says, former baseball player, says you guys met, you know each other, right? He goes, I know you're doing this interview. He did an interview on the podcast with me, and he says, I want you to ask him, this is the question, right? He says, I want you to ask him, of all the people, all those doubters that he's had over the years, whether it's in Wall Street or not, who does he want to just fucking dunk on?
Right.
Tell me who it is.
Look, it's a fucking great question, and you got to tell him I said that. And since you've asked me now that, because we recorded this before, it didn't go through, I've had time to rethink this shit too, right? So here's what I'd fucking tell you. My Uncle Sal is 93, okay? Yeah. He wakes up in the fucking morning, right? And he fucking hates. He hates, okay? He's Italian, okay? So he fucking hates, okay? Like, do you know what Italian Alzheimer's is?
No, what's that?
You forget everything but the grudges, Jay. You forget
right.
Everything. So he gets up in the fucking morning. He's 94, and I'm just going to use a stray name,
Sure.
Tommy Romano. Is that motherfucker still alive? And the answer is yes. He's like, okay, I got to live one more fucking day.
Yeah, I got to beat him.
On that guy's grave. And by the way, Tommy Romano doesn't exist. I'm talking about whoever his.
There's a guy out there, Tommy Romano. Go, what the fuck?
Right. And, one of my partners is like a fucking Buddhist now. He forgives everybody. He can't hurt a fly, all this fucking bullshit. I want to fucking kill people. I have the fucking Italian in me. You know what I mean? Metaphorically kill them. But the point I'm making is that like where I want to stick to my answer is you got to force yourself not to focus on that and just focus on your growth and development. Otherwise it will occupy you, Yeah. But you got to have a little bit of it too. It's very motivating to me. Like when I'm like
Sure.
tired, I don't want to get up to do my work for some reason. I think of my haters and I pop out of the bed like I'm fucking Rocky in Rocky 4 going after fucking Drago. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
So CJ's right. I've got my share of haters. I can't name them.
Right.
Because I'm
don't give them the benefit. Right.
Yeah. You don't want, but also you got to tell me, so if somebody fucking hates me and they're out there fucking saying they hate me, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. The fucking fact that Trump is going off on me on Twitter is fantastic. It means I'm renting space inside.
You're renting space, exactly.
It's fucking great. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I can't let these guys know that they're in my brain. You know what I mean? Working me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
I mean, but a guy like Trump who's like a fucking goon and a douche.
Yeah.
I don't even think about the guy now that he's not in office. Honestly,
and he doesn't have a platform to talk anymore. So
yeah,
he got canceled.
I tweet
he got
about
the ultimate cancel.
Yeah, I tweet about him once in a while because he's funny. But I could care less about the guy now.
Let me ask you, what the rates rising right now in the 10-year yield? Does that worry you in any way right now? What's happening? And this is unrelated to Bitcoin. Well, it's kind of related to Bitcoin because everything's affected. But what do you think what's happening?
The rates are at 150.
Yeah, why the Fed letting it happen though? They're allowing this to happen.
Well,
because they could just go buy it up, right?
Well, yeah, they could. More money printing. Mm-hmm. They are worried about the quote unquote store of value issue. I don't want to say that Bitcoin is responsible for this, but it could be, because if I'm a central banker and I'm watching something that is considered to be transactionable and over the blockchain and has all of these properties of money, I don't want that thing to be 2 or 3 trillion. Mm-hmm. It's going to get there one way or the other. These guys,
take some steam out of it, right?
Yeah. But I'm just saying, it could be that, but it could also just be the store of value issue.
Yeah, somebody told me, it was an interesting idea. He says, well, maybe they're allowing it to run a little bit because they're trying to pass this 1.2. So maybe the administration is kind of communicating behind closed doors with the Fed and saying, let it run up, put a little pressure on Congress and get this thing passed for the stimulus. Because when we got the $3 trillion infrastructure bill we want at the end of the year. So if the markets get too frothy, that's only going to make it even, the more they print, the markets keep going up. So pull some back a little bit right now and then we'll hit them. You think that's a possibility? Is that too nefarious? I don't know.
I don't think it's big enough for them to be overly thinking it like that. And I do think it's a little nefarious. When I was younger, I used to think that the central banking community was nefarious, but it turns out that they're just like polite economists. You know what I mean? They're not, don't buy into the conspiracy theory nonsense.
So I asked you last time, I'll ask you again. I said, are you a billionaire yet? And you said?
No, I said, I am a billionaire in Zimbabwe, where it costs, I think it costs like $3 billion to take a cab, like from the airport to the hotel. I mean, no, I'm not a billionaire.
And it's not important to you either, right? It doesn't.
Well, no, it's not. I'm not. I think that you're going to be a lot happier in your life if you take your ego out of things. Mm-hmm. If I end up becoming a billionaire, it'll be due to old age and reasonable compounding. Yeah. Bitcoin will be a factor in it, sure. Yeah, but it'll be to old age and reasonable compounding, but it's not going to change my life. No. Can I walk into a restaurant and say I'm a billionaire? Okay, big fucking deal. Wilbur Ross lied about his financial statement so he could tell people that he was a billionaire.
Yeah.
But it turned out he was worth $700 million instead of $3.5 billion. Okay, I guess you got better restaurant reservations because of that.
Let me ask you, do you think Trump's really a billionaire? A lot of people say they think he is.
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
I think
it's hard to tell because he has a lot of illiquid assets too, right?
Yeah, but he's also made a tremendous amount of money from the presidency. Yeah. Tremendous. I mean, he made $300 million in 6 weeks post-election. He's done these arms deals in the Middle East. I mean, he's made a tremendous amount of money.
Wow. Yeah.
So if you told me he wasn't a billionaire before the presidency, I'd say, okay, that's probably right. Is he a billionaire now after the presidency? I believe he is. I think that he's done so many side deals and broken so many laws related to the emoluments clauses of the United States that, I think he's in an OZ position, or he's been paid to do certain things from a policy perspective while president. So, I think, so my short answer is yes, I think he is a billionaire. But I don't think.
What do you think happened with Robinhood? Do you think those guys deserve some repercussions, like Vlad and them? What do you? I mean, it's like what? No,
I don't. I can explain that.
Why didn't they just lock? How about this? Why didn't they lock up the buying and the selling? Why didn't they do both? Because they benefited one side, not the other.
Well, you see, I understand they were trying to create freedom. So if they locked up both, they're constraining freedom. They had to.
But there was only selling on the downside. The hedge funds with the shorts made money, so that doesn't make sense.
But Jay, it was all a margin and collateral situation for Robinhood. It had nothing
to do with a liquidity issue. Yeah.
The first thing that I learned when I got to Goldman Sachs, and thank God for this was old school stuff. They literally took you to the operations area and showed you how things clear, what the capital requirements are, what the margin requirements are.
Somebody should have showed Vlad.
But Vlad had a model that didn't anticipate that activity.
That's right. He said that.
And so if he's wrong for that, he's wrong for that. But he's not at this time. No, I don't think so. And nobody. And by the way, my mentor at Goldman, Robert P. Castrignano, head of clearing, head of operations at Goldman, and then ultimately head of client compliance before he left.
Yeah.
He said to me 6 years ago, John Corzine didn't do anything wrong. They're going to find that money. He'll be exonerated. And then that happened. And then he called me during the Robinhood thing and said, you have to understand, this is a DTCC issue. This is not related to Citadel or Point 72. And no offense to David Portnoy, I get the populism. I get the anger.
That's what I'm leading to. Yeah, because it looks like nobody's happy about it. You know,
I got it, but don't target the stuff based on a lack of factual information. Yeah. If I took David Portnoy, who do you think that Vlad kind of is his own worst enemy in this whole PR scandal because he's not really that charismatic, or he's more of a geeky techie kind of guy or something? You can't put into somebody what God left out. What are you going to fucking do? I mean, the guy's a brilliant guy. He's done great.
He's a smart dude. Yeah.
But he's probably like a data king. You know, he's probably like a computer scientist, right? Sure. So, but in Vlad's situation, it just had to be explained better from day one. Yeah, it was a communication crisis more than it was anything illegitimate.
I kind of agree with Dave in the sense that I think both sides should have been screwed. Just lock it up, and then you're stuck in the system within their exchange. No?
But I don't agree with that because now you're restricting freedom. All he was trying to do is meet the collateral requirements from the unbiased regulatory agency. He was undercapitalized.
I'll agree to disagree on this one because I'm only thinking of the people, you know, the young kids that got screwed.
But remember this: you want more freedom for the people.
Yeah, for sure.
You're locking up both sides. You're not creating.
But
freedom.
you know that the Wall Street bets were long only, right? And then the hedge funds have positions on shorts. So
I understand that, but you don't think the hedge funds can put the shorts on at other places other than Robinhood?
That's a good point. You're right.
I mean, what are you going to
do? And then these Robinhood guys are locked in.
Suppose the guy's
That's
long.
That's a fair point. I didn't think of that.
Suppose the guy's long the stock and he wants to sell because the stock's dropping 100 points.
Hey, I know you got the chiropractic point, so I'm going to let you hop. But I want you to come on Clubhouse with me. I would love to go on Clubhouse in these Bitcoin rooms with Max Kaiser and all these guys.
Get in touch with one of my assistants, Sammy or Chris.
Yeah,
and get me on Clubhouse with you. I think you and I would have a fascinating conversation on Clubhouse.
And we'll bring people up.
And if I could get to Portnoy and explain to him how trade clears.
We should bring him in. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know him. I'd never met the guy. I have a lot of respect for him. I
love him. You get him on one tweet.
I got a lot of. I gave him $5,000 for the small business thing. I would give him more if he came on my podcast. But here's the thing: I respect him and I know where he's going with the stuff. But let's make it informed, right? And I'm not a Wall Street goon backing Vlad. I don't give a fuck. I have
that's
money.
how it's perceived, though, right? That's why you got to explain. Yeah.
I got that.
I think it made sense. I think what made sense, Anthony, what you just said, is they're just going to go to another exchange. Whereas the guys that are stuck in the system, if they can't sell, they're totally screwed at that point.
Right.
So that makes a lot of sense.
You're creating more freedom and flexibility. That's all he was trying to do is meet the capital requirement. But look, at the end of the day, I get that the system is unfair to the little guy.
I know.
So how do you make the system more fair to the little guy?
They shouldn't be playing the game, man. I mean, I'd say that to people all the time.
It's a totally separate conversation, though. Yeah. But let me tell you something. It's fairer today than ever before, but it's never going to be parity with the superstar hedge fund manager that's got billions of dollars under management, where he's got guys in his office that are 100% dedicated. He's got Jay Goulds, 100 of them sitting with him that are super dedicated to making money for him.
Yeah,
You're gonna beat the pants off a guy off his smartphone.
Yeah.
On
a subreddit.
How come me with my smartphone sitting in my underwear in my house is not going to beat the pants off of a guy that's got 100 Jay Goulds on his trading desk?
I'm just upset that the people in Congress.
I'm pissed. Jay. I want to play LeBron in one-on-one, and the fucking guy's going to beat me. I'm pissed. The guy's going to beat me. And you know what? It should be fair. I should be able to play LeBron and beat him.
I agree. They shouldn't be playing the game. It's not their place. Totally.
But if you're going to play the game,
understand the game.
Know the parameters. All right, my brother. Thank you for all this time.
I really appreciate it. No, thank you for all the time. Hey, guys, this is the Mooch. You got to follow him. Yeah.
And tell your in-laws, who I adore, and your very beautiful wife. Am I allowed to say she was a babysitter at one point? Yeah.
What's that?
She was the Scaramucci babysitter.
Yeah, she was. That's right. Yeah. I was just talking to AJ, your son, yesterday. I was like, I said, I'm so old that my wife was your babysitter, AJ. And that was running a venture capital firm. It's unbelievable.
She is universally loved by the Scaramuccis, as are your in-laws. And I'm looking forward to you and I getting on Clubhouse together. I think we'll have a lot of fun.
That'd be cool. Yeah. All right. We'll connect. Thanks a lot, Anthony. I appreciate it. Take care.